Hard work earns visibility. Reliability earns trust. Praise earns identity. But authority moves differently. Most professionals spend years trying to build an authoritative personality, adjusting tone, practicing confidence, studying leadership language, projecting certainty. And yet, inside the workplace, something remains unchanged. Their words are heard, but they do not carry weight. Meetings continue without their decisions defining direction. Ideas are discussed, but not adopted. Responsibility increases, influence remains fixed. A subtle contradiction forms. You are visible, trusted, relied upon, yet direction never settles around you. Most people misread this moment and assume the problem is personality. It isn't. This belief is the first self-betrayal, because authority is not a personality trait. Authority is a resource, and resources are allocated. Workplace hierarchies do not distribute authority according to internal identity. They distribute it according to perceived stability. The system asks one silent question: who reduces uncertainty? Authority moves towards those who appear capable of ending confusion, not towards those who express themselves most strongly. This is why some people speak very little, yet shift entire conversations. Their authority does not come from personality performance. It comes from the perception that their decisions reduce cognitive load for everyone else. The sovereign mind recognizes this early. It understands that authority is not something you generate internally and project outwards. It is something environments allow you to hold. And environments are constantly updating their access ledgers. Every workplace maintains invisible ledgers, not financial ledgers, access ledgers. They track who gets early context, who shapes direction, and who learns decisions after they are made. Most employees assume access comes from competence, but competence often increases workload, not authority. When the system observes someone who consistently executes without friction, it records a reaction receipt. Reliable, responsive, available. These are valuable traits, but they signal execution energy, not decision energy. And once enough reaction receipts accumulate, hierarchy stabilizes around that identity. You become the person who reacts well to decisions, not the person who defines them. This transition is subtle. It rarely feels like a loss. It feels like success. People praise you, managers rely on you, teams depend on you. But dependence is not authority. Dependence is consumption. Authority is allocation. Michel Foucault described power as something exercised within relationships, not possessed. In workplaces, this becomes painfully visible. Authority exists only where others behave as though it exists. It is relational. This is why personality alone cannot create it. You can feel confident and still have no authority if the system does not allocate decision weight to you. You can be introverted and still hold immense authority if your presence stabilizes hierarchy. The mistake most professionals make is assuming authority lives inside them. The sovereign mind sees the opposite. Authority lives in the psychological field between people. In meetings, the distinction becomes obvious. Some people explain, others conclude. Some individuals speak at length, justifying, clarifying, reassuring. The difference is not intelligence. It is allocation. One person is trying to earn permission in real time. The other already holds it. And the workplace senses this instantly. Every additional explanation becomes a reaction receipt recorded by hierarchy. Needs validation. Still negotiating position. This is not conscious judgment. It is structural pattern recognition. Organizations reward predictability. Predictability reduces risk. Authority, therefore, flows toward people whose behavior suggests internal certainty. Not emotional certainty, but structural certainty. They appear aligned with their role. They do not overreach. They do not over-defend. They do not over-signal. Their presence reduces interpretive noise. Most people leak authority through cooperation patterns without noticing it. They respond immediately to prove commitment. They expand beyond their scope to demonstrate value. They explain before explanation is required. Each behavior feels responsible, but psychologically, it communicates something else. I am seeking confirmation. Hierarchy reads this and adjusts access ledgers accordingly. Because authority does not belong to the person who needs reassurance, authority belongs to the person who appears capable of proceeding without it. This is why competence alone often fails to translate into influence. Competence solves problems. Authority decides which problems matter. And the gap between these two positions defines most professional frustration. The essential worker becomes indispensable precisely because they are predictable. But predictability at the execution level can trap identity. The system learns that you stabilize operations by doing, not deciding. Your reliability becomes a ceiling, not because anyone intends to limit you, but because hierarchy optimizes for efficiency. If the current allocation works, it remains. The sovereign mind understands that hierarchy resists unnecessary redistribution. Authority must therefore be perceived differently before it moves. At this stage, performance begins. They speak louder. They adopt stronger language. They imitate leadership styles. But performance rarely changes allocation. In fact, it often reduces it. When authority is performed rather than granted, the system detects tension. The signal is subtle but immediate. Position is being negotiated. Authority pulls back. Real authority is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. Consider another workplace paradox. The person with the most influence often appears the least busy. This is not laziness. It is positional efficiency. They are not reacting to every request because their role exists higher in the access ledger. Their value lies in selecting direction, not absorbing volume. Meanwhile, high performers interpret constant activity as proof of importance. But activity is often evidence of allocation level. The more reactive you are, the more the system confirms your role as executor. The sovereign mind notices this without resentment. It asks, what signals am I sending about where I belong? Authority behaves like a limited resource because attention is limited. There is another reason authority behaves like a scarce resource inside organizations, and it has nothing to do with ego. It has to do with cognitive risk. Every decision creates consequences that someone must absorb. When outcomes fail, responsibility moves backward through hierarchy until it finds a stable container. Organizations learn quickly who can carry that weight without emotional spillover. This is rarely discussed openly, but it shapes access ledgers more than performance reviews ever will. People who react visibly to pressure, even if highly competent, unintentionally signal that authority would increase volatility. The system hesitates to allocate decision weight where emotional recovery appears uncertain. The sovereign mind understands that authority is not granted because someone is correct. It is granted because someone appears capable of containing consequences. This is the moment the mistake becomes visible. Most people optimized for the wrong currency. When uncertainty rises, the difference becomes obvious. Some professionals increase output to prove relevance. Others become quieter, narrowing language to what is essential. Hierarchy interprets these two responses differently. One looks like adaptation through effort. The other looks like structural stability. Authority flows toward stability. This is why reaction receipts matter so much. Every moment of over-explanation, defensiveness, or urgency becomes a small psychological record that says, "Still negotiating internal position." Over time, these receipts accumulate into reputation, and reputation becomes predictive. When new decisions emerge, hierarchy does not evaluate everyone equally from zero. It consults memory. It asks, who has previously reduced risk? Who absorbs pressure without transmitting anxiety? Who creates fewer downstream corrections? Authority is simply the permission granted to those who repeatedly answer these questions without announcing it. This also explains why some professionals feel invisible despite constant contribution. They are measured primarily by output, not containment capacity. Their value is real, but it sits lower on the authority ladder. The shift begins when the individual stops treating authority as recognition and starts seeing it as psychological trust. Not trust in personality, trust in restraint. And restraint is rarely loud enough to be praised, but it is almost always remembered when decisions are allocated. Every organization has finite cognitive bandwidth. Decision authority cannot be distributed equally without creating chaos, so hierarchy concentrates it. This concentration is rarely explicit. It emerges through behavioral patterns. Who remains calm when uncertainty appears? Who introduces fewer emotional fluctuations? Who communicates in ways that reduce ambiguity? Authority gravitates there, not toward personality, toward stability. There is a deeper psychological reason this is uncomfortable. Humans want identity to feel internally generated. We prefer believing our traits determine outcomes. The idea that authority depends on external allocation threatens personal agency. But psychological sovereignty is not about denying external structures. It is about understanding them clearly enough to stop cooperating unconsciously with disempowerment. The sovereign mind does not fight hierarchy emotionally. It reads it. You begin to notice subtle differences. Some people ask for permission before acting. Others act within role boundaries and inform afterward. Some flood conversations with context. Others offer concise conclusions. Some fill silence to maintain relevance. Others allow silence to signal certainty. These differences are not personality quirks. They are signals. And signals update access ledgers continuously. The workplace never stops recalculating who is safe to follow. Safety here does not mean kindness. It means predictability under pressure. When pressure rises, authority reallocates quickly. People who normally speak often become uncertain. Those who remain structurally calm gain weight. This explains why authority can appear to change overnight. It didn't. The resource simply moved where stability appeared strongest. At this point, a realization begins to form. Authority is less about being noticed and more about being trusted to close loops. Who ends discussion? Who defines next action without needing consensus from everyone? Who can tolerate temporary discomfort without explaining themselves into safety? These are authority signals. And most professionals have been trained to do the opposite. They optimize for agreement. But authority does not emerge from agreement. It emerges from clarity. The sovereign mind understands the cost of misunderstanding this. If you believe authority is personality, you will spend years refining traits while the system quietly allocates power elsewhere. You will become articulate, but weightless. Respected, but bypassed. Included, but not decisive. And the most dangerous part is that you may receive constant praise while this happens. Praise can disguise stagnation, because praise rewards cooperation with existing allocation. Authority requires something quieter, internal alignment with role, and the discipline to stop sending signals that request permission. Part 1 ends here. not with a conclusion, but with a threshold. The question now becomes more uncomfortable. If authority is a resource, why do some people receive more of it, even when they appear less capable? And more importantly, what does the workplace actually detect before it reallocates authority? If authority moves towards those who contain consequences, then a harder question appears. Why do some people remain close to authority for years without ever truly receiving it? The answer sits inside a misunderstanding that most workplaces quietly reinforce. Proximity is not possession. Many professionals work near decision-making. They attend meetings, receive context, contribute analysis, even influence discussion. Yet when final direction is established, someone else closes the loop. This creates the illusion of shared authority. But authority is revealed only at the moment when uncertainty ends. Who decides when discussion stops? That is where allocation becomes visible. The sovereign mind learns to observe this moment carefully. It notices that authority is rarely dramatic. It appears in small transitions. The instant a conversation moves from exploration to direction. And once you see this, you begin to notice something else. People often mistake access for power. Access ledgers expand long before authority does. Organizations increase access because inclusion drives engagement and performance. But access is reversible. Authority is not. Most careers stall because people mistake one for the other. Access says, you may observe the process. Authority says, you may define the outcome. Many professionals never realize they have been operating inside extended access rather than real allocation. They interpret inclusion as advancement, not recognizing that the system still treats their contribution as advisory. This misunderstanding produces a subtle form of self-betrayal. The individual begins performing authority instead of holding it. They speak with stronger conviction. They attempt to sound decisive. They adopt leadership language. But performance without allocation creates friction. Hierarchy senses mismatch, and reaction receipts begin accumulating again. Trying to occupy a role not yet granted. This is where the psychology becomes uncomfortable. Authority is not granted when you demand it. It is granted when the system stops experiencing you as a risk. Risk does not mean incompetence. Risk means unpredictability under pressure. Some people are brilliant but unstable when challenged. Others are average but consistently regulated. Organizations almost always allocate authority to the latter. Because hierarchy is not optimizing for brilliance, it is optimizing for continuity. The sovereign mind accepts this without resentment. It understands that authority is less about proving value and more about removing doubt. When ideas are questioned, most professionals increase explanation. They defend reasoning. They add more context. The intention is rational, to increase understanding. But psychologically, something else is transmitted. The system observes internal negotiation. Authority rarely negotiates its existence in real time. This does not mean authority refuses dialogue. It means authority speaks from position rather than from self-protection. The difference is subtle but decisive. One communicates, "Please understand why I am right." The other communicates, "Here is the direction." Hierarchy feels this distinction instantly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that tranquility born from inner order allows a person to act without being pulled apart by external reactions. In workplace terms, this is the essence of authority allocation, not emotional coldness, internal order. When individuals remain psychologically organized under pressure, others begin orienting around them naturally. Decisions feel safer when anchored to someone who does not fluctuate. This is why the sovereign mind focuses on regulation rather than performance. Performance seeks reaction. Regulation reduces reaction. and authority follows the path of least turbulence. There is a hidden cost to misunderstanding this.
Many professionals become trapped in reaction economies. They respond quickly to everything. They maintain constant availability. They absorb problems before they escalate, and they collect positive reaction receipts along the way. But reaction economies reward speed, not authority. The more you react, the more the system confirms your role as a stabilizer for other people's decisions. You become essential, yet authority remains elsewhere. This is the paradox that frustrates high performers. They are trusted with work, but not with direction. And over time, identity begins to merge with usefulness. The sovereign mind recognizes the danger here. Usefulness can become a form of containment. Authority shifts when behavior signals a different relationship with time. Notice those who hold decision weight. They do not respond immediately to every request. They allow pauses. They consider before speaking. Their pace communicates that they are operating at a different layer of responsibility. This is not a tactic. It is alignment. When someone treats every input as urgent, they signal that they are downstream from decisions. When someone filters inputs, they signal ownership of direction. Hierarchy updates access ledgers accordingly. Another misunderstanding appears here. People assume authority requires dominance, but dominance is often compensation for insecurity. True authority rarely competes for space. It occupies space quietly. In meetings, this can look almost passive. The person listens longer, speaks later, uses fewer words. Yet when they speak, movement happens. Why? Because the system has already allocated trust. Words become heavier when the speaker is perceived as stable. The sovereign mind does not chase verbal influence. It reduces unnecessary output so that when it speaks, interpretation becomes simpler. Authority thrives in clarity. Noise dilutes it. There is also an architectural aspect to authority that most employees never consider. Organizations are designed to protect themselves from volatility. Every layer exists to filter uncertainty before it reaches higher levels. Authority therefore accumulates where uncertainty is absorbed most efficiently. If you constantly escalate problems upward, you signal dependence. If you absorb problems silently without redefining direction, you signal execution. But if you absorb uncertainty and return with clear decisions, you signal authority potential. This distinction is subtle, but decisive. Hierarchy notices who brings problems and who brings resolved paths. One increases cognitive load. The other reduces it. Authority follows reduction. At this stage, many viewers expect a strategy, a list of behaviors to adopt. But the sovereign mind understands that authority cannot be manufactured through imitation. Imitation produces tension. Authority emerges when internal identity stops seeking reassurance through action. The shift is psychological before it is behavioral. You stop asking, "How do I appear authoritative?" and begin asking, "What signals am I sending about my relationship with uncertainty?" This question changes everything. Because uncertainty is the real currency of authority, there is another layer most professionals never examine. Authority is not only about how others perceive you, it is also about how much internal negotiation they sense happening inside you. People do not consciously analyze this. They feel it. When someone speaks while simultaneously seeking agreement, approval, or reassurance, the room detects subtle fragmentation. The message may be logical, but the signal underneath says, "I am still deciding whether I can stand behind this." Hierarchy rarely allocates authority to internal hesitation. This is why two people can deliver identical ideas and receive completely different responses. One creates debate, the other creates movement. The difference is not intelligence, it is coherence.
And hierarchy feels coherence before it understands it. Coherence appears when behavior, language, and emotional tone align without visible strain. The sovereign mind does not try to manufacture coherence. It removes behaviors that fracture it. Over-explaining fractures coherence. Defensiveness does the same. Urgency without necessity fractures it completely. And every fracture produces new reaction receipts. Organizations remember patterns more than moments.
One strong presentation rarely changes authority allocation, but repeated coherence slowly alters access ledgers because predictability begins to form around the individual. This explains why authority often appears to grow gradually, and then suddenly. For months, nothing seems different. Then, without announcement, people begin deferring slightly more. Questions arrive earlier. Resistance decreases. The system has updated its internal model. It no longer experiences the person as someone reacting to hierarchy, but as someone helping stabilize it. There is also a paradox here. The more someone chases authority directly, the less coherent they appear. Effort introduces tension. Tension introduces interpretation. Interpretation increases uncertainty. Authority moves away from uncertainty. The sovereign mind, therefore, focuses on subtraction rather than addition. Less explanation, less emotional negotiation, less need to prove value in real time. This is not withdrawal, it is compression. When communication becomes compressed, meaning becomes heavier. And when meaning becomes heavier, fewer words are required to influence direction. Hierarchy reads compression as confidence in position, not personality confidence, positional confidence. And positional confidence is one of the strongest signals that authority can be safely allocated without destabilizing the system. Who can sit with incomplete information without rushing to justify themselves? Who can make decisions without emotional leakage? Who can tolerate temporary misunderstanding without immediate correction? These individuals appear stable to hierarchy, and stability is rewarded with allocation, not because they demand it, because they reduce system-wide anxiety. Access ledgers begin to change quietly. You are consulted earlier. Your silence carries interpretive weight. People check alignment before moving forward. None of this arrives through an announcement. Authority rarely arrives with recognition. It arrives as subtle shifts in how others orient themselves around you. And this is where many people make a final mistake. They notice the shift and begin performing it. The moment authority becomes performance, allocation freezes again, because performance signals internal insecurity. The sovereign mind resists this temptation. It treats authority as responsibility, not identity. Eventually, the workplace reveals its deeper truth. Authority is not something you take. It is something others stop resisting. Resistance fades when your behavior consistently reduces uncertainty, protects clarity, and stabilizes direction. At that point, authority feels almost invisible. You are not forcing outcomes. You are simply the person decisions settle around. The consequence of ignoring this is quiet but severe. You can spend an entire career collecting praise, access, and responsibility while remaining outside true decision allocation. You may become indispensable, yet structurally powerless. Respected, but not followed. Valued, but not defining direction. This is the final form of self-betrayal inside professional life. Confusing activity with authority. The sovereign mind moves differently. It stops chasing personality-based influence. It stops using reaction receipts as proof of worth. It reads access ledgers carefully, not emotionally. It understands that authority is not about becoming louder, stronger, or more charismatic.
It is about becoming psychologically predictable in the presence of uncertainty. And when that happens, hierarchy adjusts almost automatically, not because you demanded it, because the system no longer experiences you as someone seeking permission. In the next workplace conversation, observe what already happens. Who explains the most? Who reacts fastest? Who fills the silence? And who allows silence to settle before defining direction? Authority is already visible there, not as personality, as allocation. And once you begin seeing authority as allocation rather than personality,
Workplace interactions change shape. You stop measuring yourself by praise or visibility. You start observing where decisions settle and why. Watch the next meeting carefully. Not who speaks the most, who closes the loop, who carries less reaction but more consequence. Because the moment you notice how authority actually moves, you also notice where you have been unconsciously giving it away. That awareness is where the sovereign mind begins to reclaim position.